When I think back to my school days, one chapter always stands out to me, something that left an impression far deeper than any grade or sports victory ever did. I was 15 at the time, a sophomore in high school, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Chicago. My cousin Madison, a year older than me, had moved in with us for the school year because her parents were going through a difficult divorce. She was bright, energetic, and had this magnetic quality about her that drew people in. Madison had a friend named Emily, who was also her classmate and her closest confidant. Emily had a quiet confidence about her. She wasn't the kind to speak loudly or show off, but when she talked, you listened. Her humor was subtle, and her kindness was effortless. Together, Madison and Emily were a dynamic duo, always planning something, always laughing, always full of life. It was strange for me at first, having two older girls constantly around the house. At dinner, they'd sit together, giggling at jokes I didn't understand. Sometimes they'd include me, asking questions about school or teasing me about my crush on one of the cheerleaders, but other times they were wrapped in their own world. I didn't mind. There was something comforting about their presence, like the house was just a little warmer with them in it. Madison and I were close even before she moved in, but that year cemented our bond in a way I hadn't expected. I remember one Friday afternoon after school when everything shifted. It was mid-October, and the leaves were in full color, blanketing the sidewalks in reds and golds. Madison and Emily had come home with me after school, and they were in the kitchen baking cookies while I worked on a science project at the dining room table. I could hear their laughter echoing through the hallway, their voices filled with inside jokes and teenage banter. Every now and then, they'd call out to me, asking if I wanted a cookie or if I could help grab something from the pantry. Eventually, I joined them. The kitchen was a mess, flour everywhere, mixing bowls stacked in the sink, and a dozen slightly burnt cookies cooling on the counter. Madison handed me one with a grin. "It's not perfect, but it has personality," she said, and we all laughed. That night, we ended up watching movies together in the living room. I remember sitting on the floor, my back against the couch while Madison and Emily curled up with blankets behind me. We watched some corny romantic comedy, and at one point, Emily leaned over the couch and rested her chin on my head. "You're like our little brother now," she said playfully. I smiled, though something about her touch sent a strange flutter through my chest. It wasn't romantic, I didn't even know what to make of it, but it felt meaningful, like I was being accepted into a club I didn't even know I wanted to join. The weeks went by quickly. School picked up, and so did the fall sports season. I was playing JV basketball, which meant long practices and even longer bus rides to away games. Madison and Emily always came to our home games, cheering loudly from the bleachers, waving signs with my name on them. It was embarrassing, sure, but also kind of awesome. Not many underclassmen had their own cheering section. One night after a game, I came out of the locker room to find Madison waiting with Emily by her side. "You played great," Emily said, handing me a water bottle. "You've got speed." I blushed and mumbled something about needing to work on my free throws, but her compliment stayed with me longer than I expected. At school, our paths didn't always cross, but when they did, it felt like a little burst of color in an otherwise gray day. Sometimes they'd wave at me in the halls, or leave silly notes in my locker, inside jokes, doodles, or quotes from the movies we watched. It made me feel seen in a way that went beyond typical high school interactions. I wasn't just some kid tagging along. I mattered to them. Then came winter break, and with it, an unexpected shift. Madison's parents had finalized the divorce, and she was going to spend the holidays with her dad in California. She left the day before Christmas Eve, and I remember feeling a strange hollowness settle over the house. Emily came by once or twice, but it wasn't the same without Madison. The three of us had become a triangle, and now we were just a line. Still, Emily and I started talking more. She'd text me sometimes, asking how things were or if I wanted to hang out. It felt odd at first, me, a sophomore, hanging out with a junior, but we found common ground in music, old sitcoms, and a shared love of terrible snacks. One afternoon, she invited me to a local coffee shop. We sat in the back corner, sipping cocoa and watching the snow fall through the window. Emily opened up that day about her own family, how her older brother had gone off to college and barely called anymore, how her mom was always working late, how she sometimes felt like she was living in a house full of ghosts. I listened more than I spoke, and something about that conversation changed our dynamic. From then on, it felt less like I was Madison's cousin and more like I was Emily's friend too. When Madison came back in January, things picked up again, but now there was this new layer between the three of us: an understanding, an unspoken trust. One afternoon in late February, the three of us were walking home together from school. The snow had mostly melted, and the sun was starting to warm the sidewalks again. We passed the park where we used to swing as little kids, and Madison stopped and looked at us. "You two have gotten close," she said, her eyes twinkling. Emily shrugged. "He's easy to talk to. Better than most guys in our grade." I felt my face flush, and Madison laughed, linking arms with both of us. That spring brought more changes. Madison started dating a senior who played guitar and wore leather jackets. She was still around, still her vibrant self, but now her world was expanding beyond our trio. Emily, on the other hand, seemed to pull a little closer. We'd sit together at lunch sometimes, share playlists, or just talk about random things: college, dreams, fears we didn't tell other people. One Friday afternoon in April, we found ourselves at the park again. It was warm, almost summer-like, and the trees had blossomed in that sudden Midwestern way. We sat on the swings, just talking. "You've grown up a lot this year," Emily said quietly. "Not just taller, though that too. But, you see people. That's rare." I didn't know what to say to that. So I just smiled and nudged her shoulder with mine. She laughed softly, and we swung in silence for a while.